Okay, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Yasser P. I'm an associate professor in the Electrical and Computer Engineering Department. I direct the Connected and Autonomous Vehicle Research Lab at UCF, and I've been here at UCF since 2016. Our lab, Capital, research is basically focused on what I call cyber physical network systems, and these are basically apply to vehicles, transportation systems, energy systems, and other things that are networked and kind of deal with physical world. Generally, there are two thrusts of research in our lab. One is on cooperative AI for automated or autonomous vehicles. The other one on connected vehicle technologies and wireless communication. Now, today's talk is mostly around the cooperative AI subject. And I'll talk about some of the learning-based perception methods that we're working on, cooperative sensing perception, and cooperative driving subjects. Now, our work is sponsored mainly by NSF and automotive industry, mainly companies like Ford, Toyota, Hyundai, Kia, and General Motors. We also had a kind of long-running US DOT project that recently has finished. Some of the work that we have done actually found its way into that are going to be used in all new cars by government mandates in the coming years, and I'll kind of briefly talk about that as well. Okay, now, so I said we're going to be talking about automated driving. So probably a little bit of background, and this is a topic that kind of everybody is familiar with from news and so on. Now, I call this an old dream because we have been thinking about this for a long time. This image that you see is an ad from the 1950s. It's a General Motors ad, and I mean it's not very visible at the bottom, but they were kind of thinking that they could have these automated highways that would. So you would take your vehicle on the road, and the vehicle would drive basically with the help of the highway kind of guiding it. Now, at that time, they probably could not sort of think of the sort of AI that today. So that's, that was what they were kind of thinking. One thing important here is that it's been 70 years. We're kind of close to that dream now coming true, but it's still not really possible, I think, technically to deploy these things at larger scale everywhere. And the main reason for that is basically that safety is an issue, and there are basically still technical challenges in perception and decision making that are kind of making things unsafe. And why I say this is that human drivers usually we have like out of 100 million miles of driving, there is one fatal accident. While if you look at autonomous or automated vehicles today, this is in the probably hundreds of thousands or maybe like a million, which means 100 times more unsafe if you kind of want to put it that way. So there's a long way to go before and the bar is really high for these vehicles. So what we're kind of working on in our lab is basically two parts. One the perception part, the other one the cooperative driving. On the perception, what we're kind of focusing on and our angle of tackling this problem is with information sharing. Now, why do we see that as being a method is because if you look at the sensors, which are kind of the basic components of perception, they have these limitations that are just intrinsic, and there's no way that you could kind of get around some of them. For example, there could be a big truck in front of your vehicle and all of your sensors like LiDAR, radar, camera, they're all going to be obstructed. For that reason, communication could kind of come into play and kind of with a very low cost, allow us to augment this perception significantly. Now, to see how this is done, just consider this scenario here. Let's say you have these two vehicles and their view, this is like, let's say this is their LiDAR view. Their view is occluded with some object, another car in front of you, some shrubs or bushes and so on. Now, if you take one vehicle's data and process it through, generally today you do this using deep networks and so on, you're going to get, some detection, some missed detections, and so on. You look at another vehicle, it might have the same issue, but it might be detecting or misdetecting another object. Now, one way to kind of augment their perception is to have them share whatever sensory data they collected. Now, this is going to kind of require a lot of bandwidth because, if you just think about LiDAR data, it's in the millions of, points per second. Another option would be let them do their processing, whatever they found out at the end, let's share that and try to kind of fuse that information together to see, what we can kind of get over there. Now, the first one had the problem of, being very bandwidth consuming. The latter has the problem of, missing something. So our approach actually has been to do something in the middle, and that is, this is what we basically call cooperative cognition, or a part of the cooperative AI kind of umbrella. That is, the networks, the neural networks that are processing this, you might be able to take information or the features that are kind of taken from the middle layers, share them among these neural networks, change your architecture, you need to add some components, and have them process information in sort of parallel. This is what we call cooperative cognition. There are 2-3 different architectures that we have come up with so far. And we've actually shown that you could achieve, for example, from this data here, almost 40–50% of the objects that were not detectable by any of the vehicles could now be detected. And same, you could increase your detection rate by 40 or 50% if only one of the cooperating vehicles was able to, find the object. Now, this is basically one area that we have applied this idea of cooperative cognition. And the result of this would basically be better detection and, knowing where the other objects are on the road. Now, we would take these better detections, and it kind of gives us what we call these perception maps. The perception maps are basically maps that are telling you where are the other objects around you. Another thing that you could implement this is not only know where they are, you could try to figure out where they are going, what are their intentions, what are their projections, and this requires, some method of prediction. And that brings us to another NSF sponsored project that we're doing, in which we basically, instead of having vehicles send just raw sensor data of, their GPS and so on, we would let them share their models of behavior. Now, the main point here is how do we derive such models? And basically, let me just explain what those models are. What we do is we take a trajectory of a vehicle, let's say a lot of them, from these huge data sets that exist out there. We cluster short horizon behaviors, let's say 2–3 second behaviors, and then apply modeling schemes, let's say like Gaussian process regression models and or other stochastic models. With that, what we get is basically a bank of models of behavior. So what we're here saying is that we have now, just as an example, 20 different models that describe how a vehicle behaves in 2 or 3 seconds. If we put these models together in a trajectory, we could kind of see this as an alphabet of behavior. You put the alphabet, the letters together, you get words. These words are things like, lane change to left, lane change to right. And you put the words together, you get the longer term behavior. And we call those sentences, like, passing another vehicle and so on. So now with these augmented models, we could kind of now start thinking about how can we use rule-based or other sort of methods for the purpose of, automating driving. So what we've done, this is like another NSF project that is kind of right now going on. We take these models and we feed them to reinforcement learning based, or basically deep reinforcement learning networks. And we try to kind of train these vehicles to now cooperate. So cooperation here is achieved by making the vehicles to have this, what we call social utility, so that, they know their behavior and other vehicles' behavior kind of is going to impact each other. So, you can kind of see that we can go from the cooperative perception all the way to cooperative driving using these models and the predictive kind of behavior. So this is some, some of the very basic results that we have got so far. So these are the green ones are vehicles that are cooperating, sort of implicitly. Each one is independent, but because of those maps that we tie them together, there emerges these sort of cooperative behaviors. Together they avoid a collision, and they kind of create platoons and so on. Now, at the end, so a lot of the work that we do, we test them with simulators, and specifically we have a simulator called CapSim that we built using Unreal Engine. And it basically allows us also to embed the driver in there using a VR headset. In addition, in an NSF-sponsored project, we're actually building these 1/5 scale vehicles that go, basically, they can go like 50, 60 miles per hour. So they're very high speed. And they're actually the same ones that are used at companies like Toyota for some of their tests. They're kind of not really toys. We've also received a vehicle recently from Hyundai Kia that we were in the process of kind of instrumenting it before the pandemic stopped that work. All right, so that was like a very high level view of our work, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you might have.